Following video is brought to you by BSEN, Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and as always, leave a comment, and thank you for enjoying the video.
Welcome to another episode of the Kings of Causeway podcast on the Boston Sports Entertainment Network. Your host, Pat Burke, joined as always by Ryan Coffey and a special guest today, Maddie from the Bruins Bender podcast. Guys, how we doing?
Doing great. Thanks for the invite. Hey, love that montage. That was sick. That was nice. Loved it.
Yeah. A little of the old bees, a little of the new bees.
Yeah, a little bit of the old. Yeah. AJ Greer still in there. God bless him. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And any excuse or way to get Zombie Nation playing is
right.
Is all right in my book.
Exactly. I don't know about you, Maddie, special guest if you're up here in Massachusetts with me, but weather's turning, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, weather today. I'm in Maine. I'm actually in southern Maine now. I grew up in Waltham,
Nice.
But I'm in southern Maine, and we had 56 and sunny today. It felt like 75. Like it just felt like I've been dying for it. It was great. Yeah.
Yeah. My girlfriend works in Waltham. She's convincing me to go to a brewery with the pup tomorrow afternoon. Sounds like
is it? Mighty 62. Mighty Squirrel, maybe.
It might be there. I think it might actually be in Norwood. So I don't
Norwood.
know. We'll see what's on the dock.
Yeah. Some good breweries. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, all right, lads, let's jump into it. Big couple of games for the Bruins. Coming out of the trade deadline. It was going to be. We'd always said that this was going to be the time where we were going to see what the Bruins were going to be. Were they going to be pretenders? Were they going to be contenders during this last 17, 18 game stretch? Starting out first game out of the break, it sure looked like not losing anybody significant was a big shot in the arm to the roster. Going out, playing Toronto in the second leg, in 2 weeks, if you will. And an absolute beatdown of what had been a very potent Leafs team. What are you guys' thoughts on the 4-1 win?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Maddie. Go for it.
The Leafs, the Bruins have had a Leafs number, obviously, and it'll be interesting to see if they do meet in the postseason, which it's likely they will, if that'll change. But I think a lot of the Bruins players are talking about the stress that is involved in the trade deadline, and and just not knowing where you're going to be and where your teammates are going to be. And by all accounts, it's a really close-knit team. I mean, the locker room's been really sort of a tight locker room for quite a while since Chara arrived and Bergeron and so forth. So they really preach the team culture dynamic. And I think that a lot of the guys were just kind of looking over their shoulder and looking at the headlines and seeing where they might be going. And, I think it was good that nobody off the core, left, and they just made a couple of small additions, and now you are what you are, and this is what you're rolling with, and see what you have. But I think it was definitely a a shot in the arm, but more of a relief, I think, for some of the guys.
Yeah, I'm going to parlay off of that. I mean, I was kind of leading up to this trade deadline. I was a big advocate of kind of standing pat as much as possible. I wasn't kind of on the train of shipping anyone big or making any big moves. And Pat, your dad was on the trade deadline. The Chow was on the trade deadline episode. And I think he nailed it with what we're going to get, I think, in the offseason for some of these guys that have been thrown around. I think we're probably going to get more for someone like a Grizzly or an Allmark after the season than I think we maybe could have now. I know there was a rumor with the LA Kings that was for Allmark that never went through. I think that would be getting rid of one of our strengths. I think having two goalies in the playoffs can be a huge benefit. You've seen it before, right? One team has one goalie's number. You switch goalies, and now they can't figure out how to score a goal. So I think that's an advantage we have over other teams going into this playoff. Obviously in the offseason, we are probably going to have to get rid of Linus, but I liked everything we did. Bringing in Maroon, kind of, a guy that's won the Stanley Cup a few times. To me, that's a huge move, saying, hey, let's get this veteran presence in. Someone that'll stick up for the guys when it comes time to getting fighting mode and kind of grinding in front of the net. So I like the move. I think he will be healthy by the time playoffs start. So, yeah, pretty good. And then, we come out of it with that 4-1 win in Toronto, and it's a carbon copy, Pat, of kind of what we said on Monday night. And they did everything we wanted them to do as far as making a statement against a hot Leafs team. And then good game in Pittsburgh, and then things went south. But we'll talk about the rest as they come along for sure.
Yeah, I think you started for the first time in a couple of weeks. I think, DeBrusk looked like he was skating again in that Toronto game. He notched a couple of assists, but really Maddie, to your point, he was one of those ones that was kind of outspokenly vocal about how uncomfortable he was with his name kind of being thrown around, and then you keep him, and then he comes out and he has a performance like that. Maybe the front office coach kind of feels vindicated. It's like, all right, hey, we backed you. Now it's time to show your best stuff. For me personally, I always kind of get a little sick and tired of professional athletes getting paid all that kind of money, needing to feel a certain type of way and able to, in order to skate their hardest or play their best night in, night out. But, he at least stepped up in my eyes. And I was paying real close attention as that game was happening to him, to see his effort and energy level. Do you think that's something that's going to, continue the next couple of weeks as we lead into the playoffs, now that his future, at least for the next 2-3 months, is secure?
Well, it's important for him because he needs to get paid, and the team has to decide whether or not they're going to commit to him. So it's important for him to do that. The one thing we like about Jake is also the one thing that gives us a little bit of hesitation with him, is that he's a sensitive guy. He's a guy who's talked candidly about his mental health before, about how he fits with the team, about the coaching staff, previous coaching staff. I mean, he has spoken pretty candidly about the things that bother him. And he's a guy who gets up and down based on performance, based on other factors. And this is another factor, going into the trade deadline. Where am I going? I don't have a contract next year. And this is the big contract for Jake, right? He's 27. Like, you've got to, this one you got to hit on. This one's got to be 4 or 5 years, $5-6 million. I mean, this has got to be the big one, because after you age yourself to 30, you're not getting long-term deals. You're not getting top dollar. You're not. So this is kind of the sweet spot. And if it doesn't hit here, then he kind of misses his window for big money. Now, whether or not that's a huge deal with him, I have no idea, but it behooves him to do well. Like this end of year and into the postseason, he has to produce, or at a better level than he has, and more consistently, or they're probably going to let him walk, I would think.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's almost a catch-22. If he performs the way the Bruins are going to need him to perform to be successful as an organization the rest of the season into the playoffs, he probably prices himself out of what the Bruins are going to be comfortable spending since we've kind of been on the DeBrusk roller coaster for the last 4 years, and so it's, if he plays really well and awesome, and we do really well, great, but that probably means he walks. If it doesn't, well, maybe we get him cheap. Exactly. Right. Do you want him even if he is, a little cheaper? Is his swings in form worth that? And that's, maybe that's why Sweeney gets paid the big bucks. Coffee, any thoughts on DeBrusk's effort and energy levels in that Toronto game?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we got to play all our games in Canada because that seems to be when he decides. But that was a home game, forgive me. But that seems to be like he just has an extra step when we're playing these Canadian teams. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, Matty nailed it. He's right at that area where like he's going to be looking for a 5 to 6 year. I don't think there's any scenario where the Bruins give him that unless he play, and then he might price himself out, right? If he does do well in the playoffs, then he's looking for over $6 million. Like we can't afford that. So I think you nailed it. I think, by 27 years old, especially in hockey, you probably have a pretty good idea of if a guy's going to take that next step. And I think unless it comes out of left field, I don't think it's happening. I mean, we've been having this conversation for, it feels like 3 years now of Jake's right there. He has the skill. He has the ability to kind of be one of these top guys and just it's never come out, whether it's it's mostly consistency in my eyes. You've seen flashes of excellence. Like he can skate down the ice. He looks as fast as McDavid sometimes. And then other times it looks like he's lost on the ice. So to me, that's not something you want around for a 5 or 6 year deal is inconsistency. And so I think there's no scenario where Jake DeBrusk comes back next year. So hopefully we get playoff DeBrusk and get the boost out of him this year. Because I don't think we're seeing him next year, unfortunately.
Yep, you love to see him put himself in the shop window, maybe earn some hardware, and then go on to. I'm sure he would like to go up to Canada, or wherever. We'll wish him well when he goes. That rolls into another absolute beatdown of a game at home against Pittsburgh, a game that you, Coffee, were at. Great footage got set out there. That was absolutely great that you were doing, during the game. Talk to me a little bit about what the atmosphere was like inside the Garden and what you could see on the ice versus what we might have been only watching, at home on the TV.
Yeah, I mean, another home game. I mean, I think the boys came ready to play. It was. I mean, Jake Gensel, we called it out on the pod prior, Pat. I was like, I don't think there's going to be a Jake Gensel. So we knew Pittsburgh was going to be somewhat beat down and ready to kind of take advantage of, and we did. I mean, it's weird because if you look at the statistics of the game, you wonder what the heck happened from Pittsburgh's side. There were, 40 shots on goal. Allmark played out of his mind. But when you look at the final score, it was completely lopsided to Boston's side. So we scored with the chances we had. They were quality chances out of the 23 shots we had. Obviously, would love to see better defensive performance from a shot volume perspective. But if you break up that 40, maybe 10 or 15 were quality chances from that side. So I think being up there at top level, I think we played good. I think, Pat, we've called out Lindholm's, coming back and what he can do for the defense. Up until the Blues game, I'm saying, hey, here he is. He's back. He's changed this team. He's going to make us turn around defensively. And obviously, we'll get into the Blues game after this. But defensively, I thought we looked a lot better with Lindholm on the ice. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Matt,
I
what were your thoughts?
I agree. Here's the thing. The Penguins are in a weird spot. Like they have made a decision. We're going with Crosby and Letang and Malkin and Carlson to the end. And now they're aging and they don't have a lot put together there to really take another cup run. Like it's really hard. Like most of their cap is filled with those 4 guys. So that's kind of what they've decided to do. I don't know of a scenario where they can get back to cup contending. So, and the Bruins have had some success in the past against the Penguins. It's just a good matchup for them. But you're right. I think defensively, they got back to what they should be which is more of a defensive first team, and then capitalize on your opportunities, as Ryan said. So that's what you need to be, in less of a let's try to rush it up the ice, let's try to out offense people. That's where they get into trouble. They turn the puck over, they don't finish, the other team comes down and finishes, bad pinches, all that stuff. So I think that the Bruins got back to their identity there, but as you said, against St. Louis, it swung back the other way.
Yeah. One of the things that Ryan, that you pointed out was, from a shot volume standpoint, the numbers were not great for if I'm coaching, if I'm coaching the defensive unit, at Warrior Ice the day after that, I'm looking, hey, we only let up one goal and that's all anybody's going to remember, but oh my God, 40 plus shots given up. Like, that is the type of volume that a better team is going to punish us, with, so from that standpoint, yes, Lindholm just getting back, which I do think is going to be huge. We've talked ad nauseum about that. But any concern with the shot volume kind of trend of the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've given up a lot of shots in these games, and quite honestly, we've been burned in a lot of these games. Like we were in the next one, because going from a 5-1 win, we come out and lay an absolute egg in a 5-1 loss, where again the shot numbers are not great, and this time the goaltender isn't there to stand on his head and bail everybody out. So what might have been, was that just didn't have the sharpness of the goalie in net that time? Was it the defense, we're papering over the defensive cracks with stellar goalie play, and if we don't have that, we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, interesting tale of two tapes. Pittsburgh, we let up a lot of chances. Being at the game, I was trying to pull it up. I can't find it, but sometimes they do that shot map of where the shots actually come from. Right. For some reason, I can't find it. But as a viewer at the stadium, a lot of them were from the outside. So that's what I was saying. Although the volume was there, I'd say quality chances were a lot less, which you can probably find in some advanced stats. But so that didn't worry me as much. I felt like we got back to that defensive performance. A lot of them were outside shots and not chances where I was like, holy shit, Pittsburgh could have scored 8 goals on us. However, it's actually the opposite. So when we lost to St. Louis, we had fewer shots to their 22, which was strange. That game, to be honest, I had a men's league hockey game that night, so I had to watch the second half of the game highlights. It was really weird. Like, I think we just, we had that goal called back that probably should have been a goal when it was 3-0. That could have made it 3-1, but I don't really know what happened. I can't really put my finger on it. It was just a weird game. Kevin Hayes, local boy, bit us in the ass again. It seems like every time he comes to Boston, that happens. But it was a weird game. I don't want to read too much into it, but it's also not something you want to see. So hopefully that's just a throwaway game over the next week or so.
Yeah, I thought the officiating blew in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then, they literally blew a call. And then, but the Bruins didn't really help themselves either. It wasn't like they were going to win the game with better officiating. And it was just one of those stinkers. And Monty, after the game, said we have 91 points. We're a good hockey team. It's what everybody has one of those nights. We just aren't used to it, because last year they lost 12 games in regulation all year long. Like they blew teams out. And they didn't have a lot of these types of stinkers. They're back to being, normal like everyone else, and that this is what happens every once in a while. And it happened against St. Louis. I just, the only thing that's a little alarming is that defensively, they still need to shore it up more consistently. And if they're playing a team like Toronto or Florida, they have to be disciplined defensively, have to take care of the puck, possess the puck, and really be good at that and solid, or other teams are going to get chances. And then you got to rely on your goaltending, and goaltending has been terrific, but it's also covered up a lot of bad play in the last couple seasons where the goaltending just bails you out. And then you look at the score and okay, we won, but there were, 6 or 8 high danger chances where the goalie just saved you, and then you won the game. So this year seems to be a little different. Seems to be the puck goes in the net a little bit more on those mistakes, and you lose. So it's something that's a little bit concerning to me as we go forward. And we talked about the identity on our podcast today is their identity should be defense, a defensive team, solid defensively, puck possession team, and not more of a rush team. And Monty doesn't think they're a rush team. McAvoy said, I think we can be. And that was kind of concerning to me. Like, do the players really think that there's something they're not? And are they trying to be more of let's rush the puck and let's play offense and we're more gifted than we think we are, whereas they should be more dedicated to a defensive type of system. So I guess it's whatever prevails in the playoffs.
Yeah. We've talked on the show before about how I'm a big soccer fan, and I think hockey and soccer are very, very much alike in that coaches have and a coach's philosophy and game plan needs complete buy-in from the top down on the roster. If a hockey coach or a soccer coach wants to play, hey, we're going to play short passes, control possession, stout defending, slowly work our way up the field or slowly work our way up the ice, limit turnovers, and we'll win the game 1 or 2-0, 2-1, something along those lines. If you've got even one guy out there that's just like, you know what? I got this. It can throw a wrench in the entire process. And then that's where you end up looking. It's like, do these guys even know what they're doing? Are these even pros? Like They look lost in the sauce out there. So I do think it's a little concerning that Montgomery publicly says we're not a rush team. My philosophy is stout at the back, possession, limit mistakes, limit turnovers, and take our chances when we get them. And then you've got McAvoy, an assistant captain and a bona fide veteran at this point on this team, basically saying the exact opposite of like, well, we could, if we're allowed to, we could be something. We could do that. That to me is concerning a little bit. Coffee, does that bother you at all that McAvoy kind of says, coach, we got this a different way?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely bothers me. I think there needs to be buy-in. I mean, soccer, hockey, great examples, but any sport, you really need buy-in from the whole team. And I'd say to hear something like that, it's just misaligned from what their expectations are. And I'd say defense isn't just defense in our defensive zone. Defense can start at the structure in the offensive zone. If you're playing a sound defensive structure, that's different than playing really well defensively in your defensive zone. So I think maybe what's misunderstood, or maybe, Charlie didn't mean it, is we need to structure on the entire ice, all 200 feet of the ice. If we can play sound structure defensively in the offensive zone and in the neutral zone, well, guess what? That's going to naturally lead to a lot more chances from our offense. So do I think we're a rush team? Absolutely not. So if he said that specifically, that is very concerning. If it's more hey, maybe we can get more offense from our defensive core, that's a different story. But I think that starts with a sound structural defense up and down the ice. And I think, we may have turned a corner a little bit. I will just say with like Mason Lohrei and Wotherspoon and some of these other guys, Lindholm is very good defensively, but he has some of that offensive characteristics to him. I think we may have changed a little than what we're used to. But I still think we don't want to get into those battles with like Toronto where we're going up and down the ice and it's a 5-4 game. That does not help us in any aspect.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm a little concerned with it too. And I really question, if they end up with a first round exit again, I really question whether they make a decision on Montgomery. Like if there's something there where they may have to go a different route or change kind of the philosophy because they realize they aren't a rush team. They aren't as offensive as they were last year. Like they need to find more offensive pieces. And until they do that, they need to be defensive and possession. And so I wonder if that even becomes a discussion. I think it's more likely than you think, because if that's another first round exit and they say they lose 4-1 to Toronto, I think they explore it. I think they talk about it anyway, and they talk about the core and what kind of team they want to be going forward.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think anytime you have, in a pressure cooker environment like Boston is, and all Boston sports teams face this. It's one of the few sports cities in the country where you're expected to win, to compete, if not win, for championships every year across every sport. Or people start actively trying to burn things to the ground. The Red Sox are going to have a hell of a time trying to manage their fan base, I think, this season, because they've basically given up on the year before it's even started, and that's just not going to fly multiple years in a row. For me, if Montgomery bows out of the playoffs weekly again, I think you're absolutely right. At some point, you have to look at the head of the bench and say, you might be a hell of a coach. It's not even necessarily an indictment on his coaching ability.
Sure.
It might just be, you're not the guy to get. We can't get rid of 22 players in an offseason. We can get rid of one coach and try and get somebody that may fire up these guys a little bit more, or whatever it might be. Some guys, historically, some coaches just seem to connect with their locker room in a way that while the results might not be there, the effort always is. This is a Bruins team where I didn't see a lot of effort against St. Louis. I know we're talking like, hey, not concerning. I'm less concerned about the scoreline and more concerned about the fact that within, after getting punched in the mouth in the first period, they were just kind of like, all right, we don't have it today. We'll pack it in and try again, on Thursday in Montreal. And for me, watching it and trying to analyze it, I struggle to see how that type of mentality or capitulation is a light switch that just, no, we would never give up on a playoff game. No, we'll skate when it's the playoffs.
Right.
We're at that edge of the season where, like, this is where you start treating every game, even if it doesn't mean anything, like a playoff game, so that when game one of the playoffs start, you're not, the lights aren't too bright, the skates aren't too heavy. At least that's where I'm coming. I'm curious to think, Maddie, what you think on that.
Well, Montgomery was brought in here because he was the anti-Cassidy, right? He was the guy that was going to massage players' egos and hug them a little bit more, and he was going to be better with the younger players. And that whole thing we heard about when Cassidy was let go, like, the young guys need more of a chance, we need a softer voice and all that. And the softer voice seemed to work for a bit, of course, because anytime someone new comes in, the players are energized, they like this guy, great. But then, as you said, there's little signs in there that maybe they aren't pushed hard enough, or maybe they're not accountable enough. And where have the young players been? Like, all this talk about how we're going to really treat the young players better, and I haven't seen John Beecher in weeks. Like, I don't know what's happening there either. Are we giving young guys a chance, or
we'll see him? We'll see him tomorrow. We do know he's been recalled on him. We'll see him tomorrow.
Yeah, right. And then he'll be sent down the next day, and we'll watch Jakob Lauko skate in circles again. And so I'm really wondering, and I think he is a good coach, and Cassidy was a great coach, but he wasn't the right guy at the time, I guess. And Montgomery is a very good coach, but he might not. That's how hockey is. I mean, hockey shelf life in coaches is very short, and guys get, we've seen guys in Stanley Cup runs get fired, mid-season, so it happens, and that's just hockey. That's how it goes. The voice just gets lost in the room, and this is early for Montgomery, a year and a half to be that. And I'm not even saying that's the case now, because I think that the guys do respect him and so forth, but there are subtle little signs that maybe the message isn't getting across, or, like you said, the buy-in isn't there, or whatever it is. and we're going to see what the effect is on that in the playoffs. I for one, think there should be a little bit of load management, because I think last year they shot themselves in the foot playing Bergeron in Montreal, and we saw what happened there, like playing everybody to the end and kind of ran out of gas, got hurt and all that. So I'd like to see McAvoy take a couple of nights off. I'd like to see Pasta take a couple of nights off, like Marchand and those types of things. But I'm with you. I think that you should start gearing up at least your style and how you want to play now in the last 14 games.
I've got a couple of things about the load management that we'll touch on in a little bit when we kind of go a little free form, and I want to hear what you guys are thinking about a couple of topics. But let's close out the recap section. Coffee, I'm sure you've prepared your 3 stars of the week. Maddie, if you don't have anything prepared, that's all right. If you can think of some stars you want to give out, sure, we're going to give you an opportunity.
Yeah.
Pat, I was thinking, should we go off script and just each pick one? Is that?
Ooh, okay, yeah.
Is that a little?
All right. Let's.
Ryan must be the talent in this operation.
Well, all right, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, you wanna change the script on the go? Let's go. Who's your star of the week?
Well, let's throw our guest on the spot. Let's let Maddie take the first pick.
Oh, you're not even gonna let him see what it's like. Okay,
we'll take the scraps. Right. We'll take the scraps.
I'm going. I'll tell you right. I'm going Linus Ullmark, and the reason why I'm going with him is because I thought he handled the whole situation really well in an awkward. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's kind of awkward and so forth. He vetoes the trade. He comes right back the next game and plays extremely well. And then after the game, talks candidly about it, about how about teammates rallied around him, reached out to him. McAvoy reached out to him. And it really, I think the team, everybody involved handled it about as well as you could. And it showed on the ice where he had a great performance and didn't miss a beat. And I guess that, they're ready to make the run with him and Swayman and net. And I just thought the professionalism he showed and the performance, which is important, is why I'd have him as a star for the week.
That's a great pick. He stood on his head, in that game, and with having to deal with all the rumors and you're exactly, the team reached out, and not saying he needed a pickup, but it's got to feel good when teammates are reaching out and saying, hey, we're glad you said no to that. Hey, we got this together. For the most part this season, it's kind of felt like Swayman was the guy and Ullmark was guy number 2. Last year, it was Ullmark was kind of the guy and Swayman was the guy, the B side. Well, Ullmark comes out of that, survives the trade deadline bullshit, if you will, and then comes out, stands on his head, doesn't throw anybody under the bus, talks about how the team rallied. Very next game, Swayman has an absolute stinker. Mm-hmm. If over the next couple of games, Ullmark gets the look and Ullmark looks really well and Swayman kind of struggles, do you see a route for the roles to kind of flop again as we approach the playoffs? And maybe Ullmark becomes the de facto number 1 and it's his job to lose?
Your dad had a hot take on this on the trade deadline, and I'm in the camp of we shouldn't commit to it. Like, in my eyes, they're 1A, 1B interchangeably, and I truly believe one of our greatest assets this year, in the last few years, is not having them both be 1As. Flip them in and out. Like, I mean, as a hockey player, if you're playing the same goalie, they're going to start to read how you shoot. They're going to start to pick up on little things, right? So our greatest asset is being able to interchange them. So I wouldn't necessarily go into the playoffs thinking he has to be the starter. He comes in when he starts to fail. I mean, I just don't. I think the opposite strategy should make sense here. And I will be honest, I've always kind of leaned, if I had to pick one, I think Linus is more of a professional. To Maddie's point, off the ice handled everything appropriately, but he has that calmness of like a Tuukka Rask, but like his play style is just, I feel like something the players can get comfortable around, whereas Swayman's a little bit, ad hoc, off the cuff, a little bit more jerky, which they're both phenomenal goalies. Don't get me wrong, but I think that type of presence in the playoffs, he is a little older. Is if I had to pick a starter, we're pulling at hairs here, but I would probably pick Linus to be the starter if I had to pick one. But again, I'm under the philosophy of switch them up throughout the playoffs.
Allmark has something to prove. I mean, the last two playoffs, he has been replaced by Swayman both times. One because probably of injury, and they probably played him too long, and the other one was because of performance. So, the jury's still out on whether or not he can do it in the playoffs and then make a run with Allmark as your goaltender. So there's something to prove there for him. Now, do I think he can't do it? No, I think he could do it. But the jury's still out. Like there's no result there that says that he can do it yet. So that's one factor. I'd start Swayman just because of the year he's had and because he's probably your goalie of the future, and you start him and see where you're at. The one sort of interesting thing about it though is that you're trying to show the value of Allmark because you probably want to trade him in the offseason, and then he doesn't play in the postseason. And he's only had a track record of two kind of Mets, playoff series in 2 seasons. Like, what kind of value does he have at 29, 30 years old with 1 year left on his deal? Like, are you committing to a guy, even though he's been really good, a Vezina Trophy winner, like really good in the regular season, but he hasn't shown you that he can be the guy right through the playoff run? So does that change teams' minds? So it's you're almost shooting yourself in the foot by not playing Allmark, because then when you go to the trade to trade him, you're like, hey, yeah, this guy's great. Give me all your picks and all your prospects, and yeah, we want the mother load for this guy. And they're like, wait a minute, you didn't even play him in the playoffs. Like, what does that mean? So it's kind of an interesting dynamic as you head into the off season.
Yeah, I'd say it's it's a good problem to have, I guess, as opposed to what the opposite would be, where you're looking around. It's like, who's going to play in net? But it's definitely, it's got to be one of those selection headaches that is keeping the staff up at night, especially if one starts to perform a little more than the other on a little more, consistent basis as we go through these last, handful of games. Could be really interesting. All right. Allmark's off the board. Ryan Coffey, who you got as your star of the week?
Yeah, I think I'm going to leave the obvious one to you. I think we'll see what happens, but I'm going with someone who made an impact immediately upon their return. We've been talking about him for weeks. Going with Hampus Lindholm, 2 assists immediately in the game he returns, and we really needed him back, honestly, from a defensive standpoint, but to add the offense, obviously a bonus. So love to see it when the guy comes back and performs immediately. We talked about Carlo coming back and needing that kind of ramp up. Didn't start too well the first 2 or 3 games, and then kind of turned it back on. So glad Lindholm hit the ice immediately. And if we fast forward to the Blues game after that, he wasn't a plus or minus, he was an even. So can't really blame him for any of the goals in St. Louis as well. So I've liked his game so far already, coming back fresh. So yeah, second star. Who are you going with, Pat?
Well, further, Matty, small sample size. Only 2 games, him coming back. What were your thoughts on Lindholm?
Oh, I think the rest. I think the time off helped them. Obviously, we don't know what these guys are battling injury wise. Like Derek Forbort, we're learning that he had some fairly significant injuries. Like, so we're on him every night. Like, the guy stinks, and the guy can't move the puck, and he's turning it over, and he's not penalty killing. But if he's
he can't seem to arrive on time to team meetings.
Right, he doesn't. Well, that's his own problem. That's his own. That is a problem. But we don't know what guys are going through and so forth. So Lindholm's a really good player. He catches a lot of grief. He hasn't been as good offensively, obviously, as he was last season. He kind of burst onto the scene and played really well early, and people were like, oh my God, he gets an extension. He's playing great. This is a steal. This guy's great. And then since then, he's kind of leveled off, and he's still good. He's good. And for this team, he'll be a good, first to second pair kind of defenseman going forward and so forth. So I think he's fine. But I thought he definitely showed some good signs. It's really going to be, though, again, a test with the physicality of the postseason, the heavy forechecking, which tends to get him in trouble. He gets a little jittery with the puck, gets a little indecisive, and that's when his downfall in postseason play, when it's different. So can he handle that? Can he adjust to that? We'll see.
Yeah, I think getting him back is a huge thing. The Bruins absolutely needed to get him back. To an earlier point, I think he is one of those guys that whose load should be managed the rest of the way. He's kind of come out and doesn't seem to have lost a step in terms of reading the game, which is great. Probably tells me, all right, he can play 2, take 1 off, play 1, take 2 off. We can ease him in, especially if it was, a groin niggle. We don't want that, coming back. We've seen, to your point, what happens when we push guys for no reason at all. The fact of the matter is we are 9 points ahead of Toronto right now. Toronto's not catching us. Toronto themselves are 8 points ahead. They're pretty much locked into the 3. We're pretty much locked into the 2. Okay, if that's where we're going to be, let's let Lindholm not have to come sprinting back. Let's maybe not only let him take some time off, but maybe spend some of that extra time, to your point, working on like, hey, we're going to work extra. You're not going to play tonight. We're going to work extra on pressure situations for you and where to go. I do think a huge help for him would be if everybody bought into the same system, started driving the bus the same way, and he could trust that people were going to be where he's expecting them to be. You mentioned, the indecisiveness is a lot easier problem to fix when without having to look where your boys are going to be on the ice, because they're putting the effort to get to the spots that they're supposed to be. A lot of these, how did that guy just know that he was going to be there? It's like, well, they ran this in practice so much, and the guy has never not skated his ass off. So yeah, he trusted when he dropped the puck right there, somebody was coming right behind. However it might be, that trust element is something that he would greatly benefit from, and goes all back into, we've got to get everybody bought in on what the hell this system is going to be. So I'm thrilled that he's back. I do think we got to load manage him a little bit to prevent a recurrence of the injury. Same thing with Forbert, a little less of an impact guy, but we're at a point right now where we're not chasing, a historic win total or points total. We're not chasing a playoff berth. We're pretty much cemented where we're going to be. Let's get everybody healthy to the playoffs for once. Like, can we have 1 year where all of our best guys, we don't come out and realize, Pastrnak playing on torn cartilage, and Marchand punctured lung, and Ullmark sprained whatever. Like, can we just have a playoff run where they're not dealing with that going into it? All right, that moves it to my star of the week. I know, Coffee, you mentioned it might be the obvious one. Maybe I'll just be zigging, maybe I won't be. I've got Pavel Zacha. Talk about a guy that has been. We have put him in the sin bin on this podcast before for lack of performance from what we know he can do and what this team needs him to do. He had a week doing exactly what this team needs him to do. And on a multi-game level, he contributed across all the games this week in meaningful ways. He's starting to get that confidence back. The chemistry is starting to come back. The effort level is coming back. I was really impressed with Pavel Zacha. I think this is a tempo that he needs to maintain. Whether or not he's able to do that, we'll have to see. But for this week, he gave me everything I could have expected out of a de facto number one center. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed. That's who I thought you'd pick. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely kind of stepped it up a notch in the last week or so. I mean, we need him to play like a first-line center. Your dad highlighted it a month ago. If we are going to go anywhere in the playoffs, we need people like Zacha, like DeBrus, to elevate their game to the level they should be playing at, never mind exceeding that value. So, yeah, I mean, Zacha's impressed me over the last few weeks, and he's doing it with different line mates too, with like here and there. So I've liked what I've seen from kind of the top two lines and their ability to kind of change it around and still produce. But yeah, I like Zaka's performance last week or so.
Yeah, I did too. Saka's been a guy that's kind of been up and down, and he disappeared for 10, 12 games there. And I don't think he's a number one center. I think that he has potential, and he was obviously sixth pick in the draft and a big prospect at the time. But I just don't think. I think he's more of a 2 center, maybe even a 3 on a really, really good team. Like he's pretty good, 200 foot. Like the thing is going to be like they need someone they can trust. Defensive zone draws, they across the board they aren't great at the face-off dot, especially in the big situations. They lost one against Edmonton.
Yeah, cost the game.
Crossing the game. Like you just can't have that. So they need to find guys who can do that. So he needs to be better there. He needs to produce, as Ryan said, he needs to produce like a number one center, which is, point per game. Like it's that's what it is. So, and I don't know if he can do that. So, going forward, I think I'd like to see him be a second line center at the very highest when they start to reshape this roster going forward. But for now, he's got to be consistent, and he's got to be productive. He's got to win draws. He's got to play a lot of ice time, and I'm hoping he can do it. I just don't know if he can.
Yeah, you highlighted a pretty big gap on the Bruins roster, which is we don't really have a first line center. I think
that's why they need him. They need him to be this number one guy.
Right.
2 goals, 3 assists. That's top line performance for a week. But can you do that for the next 10 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
And Maddie, to your point, he's never been able to do that for that long of a stretch. Maybe it's different this time. History would say don't get your hopes up, in which case a lot of the other guys are going to need to step up, because we don't have kind of that de facto obvious. This guy would be a number one center on 20 other teams. No, Pavel Zacha would be a number 2 center on 20 other teams.
Sure. And hey, at $4.75 million, if he's the number one center, you got a steal. That's great value, terrific value. Even at second line, it's decent. But he needs to be really productive he needs to be a 60, 70 point guy to be a top line center.
Yep.
Yeah. Both Coyle and him, I viewed going into the season as second, third line centers. I think they've both elevated enough to consider him second line, but nowhere near a first line center. So we need the team to produce outside of kind of that first line this year, obviously.
And I'll tell you what, Coyle has been like, it's a minor miracle what he's done, because he's had the best the year of his career at 31 years old, when there was no sign that he could do this. And to do that with all the pressure in the world to be that guy is pretty impressive. And I don't think he gets enough credit for it. Like we all said, like he's got to be second line center. His production has got to increase. Everybody kind of sort of, looked at it funny and was like, there's no way that's happening. But it did. And it's really remarkable that he can have the year he had when his best year was 8 years ago. Like, to have this kind of year is just really impressive, and he doesn't get enough credit for it. Like,
I'd like to kind of take some personal credit for this Charlie Coyle resurgence. Friends of the pod will know that when I shit talk Charlie Coyle, he likes to rub it in my face that I don't know what I'm doing. So earlier in this year, I slandered him up and down. He took off, and then when he started dipping. Or then I praised him. I was like, mea culpa. I was wrong, Charlie. I'm so sorry. And then he did a little bit of this. 2 weeks ago, I got off of the Charlie Coyle train hype. I will not say another nice thing about him until June.
Good.
And here we go again, going up like that. So, going. Charlie, you garbage.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and Matt called out an important point, which is Zacha being a 200 feet player. I think that's, if we had to pick a first line center, you'd probably give the edge to Coyle because of his ability to play well defensively. Right. So, I mean, Matty nailed it. Like, he's excelled every aspect. So consistency is something the coach looks for on a first line. So I had to pick one, Coyle probably gets that nudge because of his two-way play there for sure.
Well, at the end of the day, we're going to need them both to play at or above their current level if we're going to have any semblance of tangible success in the postseason. All right, moving on. Those are some of the highlights. And when you have a 4-1 win and a 5-1 win, there are a lot of highlights, great players you can pick from. But when you've got a 1-5 loss in there, there's going to be some guys that need to spend some time in the sin bin. Ryan Coffey, why don't you show Maddie how we do the sin bin? Who you got?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because we had two such good games and then obviously that stinker. So I'm really just basing it off the stinker. And I think Mason Lohrei is going in the sin bin for me. He was a -3 against the Blues. It's interesting because I love what he brings offensively, and I think he really is a gifted player. He's not at the level of a Cale Makar, but I guess there's some similarities there in, I guess, how he plays. But that's always going to be a liability defensively, and I think that it's just one of those games where it really showed up, and it's not going to happen every game, but that really highlighted, hey, sometimes he maybe is too offensive or gets caught on the defensive side, and so -3 on the board for that game, not acceptable by anyone's standards. So I hate putting him there as a rookie, but he's going in the sin bin for me.
All right, Maddie, you want to take a shot at throwing somebody in the box?
Yeah, I haven't been a real JVR fan lately, and I'll tell you, I think he's hitting a wall. Like I think that's what it is. I mean, he's 34. He doesn't skate well. He's been the last 10, 12 games. He's been pretty absent. He'll score around the goal line and in front of the goaltender. That's where his bread and butter is. And at this point in his career, it's even more so. I really concerned. I was an advocate for dealing him at the deadline because I thought you could get something for him. And he's a UFA and he's 34. And whatever he did was gravy this year. I mean, he took a flyer and he did okay for a big stretch of the season. I would have sold high on him, see what you can get. If you can get a third or fourth rounder, you take it, or a young prospect, whatever, you take it. And I would have dealt him at the deadline, but obviously they don't, Sweeney wants to make the playoffs, make a run, wants to have all his core guys, wants to have all his weapons. And I get that, but I think a savvy move would have been to deal him. And I think that right now, unless there's some sort of resurgence, I think Toronto's a terrible matchup for him. Just because of their speed and I don't know if he can keep up. And if there's not as many penalties in the playoffs, I mean, what kind of value does he bring?
Yeah.
So
his value is definitely in front, hanging out in front of the net
right.
on the power play.
And I'm just down on him right now, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to end well.
Well, good news for you is nobody that we have ever put in the sin bin 1 week has earned that honors 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
So maybe he does have a little bit of a resurgence. Here's hoping. Okay. Now that doesn't mean you can't end up in there again. And I am putting a person back in the bin. And quite frankly, it all comes down to mentality. We talked a little bit about how getting buy-in and needing to be a voice of strength in the locker room is so crucial in hockey. Jim Montgomery's going back in the box for me. I'm sorry. How in the hell are you 1-5-2 since February 1st against teams outside of the playoff positions? 1-5. That one was Pittsburgh. Going up until the Pittsburgh game, we were 0-5 or 0-4-2 against teams outside of postseason contention. Now, on the one hand, that means that we're playing pretty decent against playoff teams. Awesome. On the other hand, I personally view that is a lack of killer instinct and a lack of put them away mentality, which we have seen all season this Bruins team lacks. We are the worst team in the league at giving up late third period leads and then going on to not take maximum points. So it is not in my opinion, it is not they're taking it off because load management. They know they don't need to try that hard. This team's not a threat. I call bullshit. I call that these guys cannot stay dialed in for whatever reason. And for me, that's on player locker room leadership, and that's more importantly on coach locker room leadership. Now we'll talk in a little bit. The addition of a Pat Maroon may be a huge part of, hey, shut up and lock in. I've won 3 of these in a row. When I talk, you listen. Doesn't matter what my production is. I'm going to go out there and skate my ass off. So you better not let me outwork you. I just got here. Maybe he's that guy. If he is, awesome. Coach still needs to do his job, in my opinion. I don't think he did his job in a very winnable. This Blues team is garbage. And you come out there and nobody wanted to play. And Nesson ran an article about, Jake DeBrusk, the only guy out there, trying. It's like he didn't put the puck in it. Like, no, sorry, no one showed up to that game. Everybody was already thinking about the 3 days off, or the 2.5 days off, and the trip to Canada. And to me, for a guy who's got a shaky playoff resume as it is, not what you want to see. Guys taking games off that they have no business taking off. So for me, Jim Montgomery in the sin bin, but I'm interested to hear your guys' take. Maddie, what you got?
Well, it does speak to how motivated they are to play against these teams. I think they're like 19-8-4 against playoff teams, which is a really impressive stat and a good sign. But they're not as good against non-playoff teams. And it may speak to motivation factor or playing down to the level of your competition, or, other factors that are involved. I think that, as I've said before, I just think that this is a really important playoff for Montgomery, because I'm not sure if he survives, if it's another kind of soft exit in the first round again, because that would be back-to-back, a collapse when you're the best team on the planet, and then to lose again in the first round in a soft fashion is not a good trend. And I think you'll see a lot of heat surrounding him.
Especially when it's likely to be Toronto. If we do bow out in the first round, it's
like
likely to be against Toronto.
If they get over the hump on you, that's the other thing.
Right,
is that
you're no longer the top dog, and now you
for
don't.
12 years.
And who was responsible for capitulating?
Right.
All eyes are going to look at the coach. We're not going to remember Mason Lohrei or John Beecher were on that team. It's going to be Jim Montgomery. Let Toronto get the mojo back.
Right. And last year I think he kind of blew it, because of his decision making and his scrambling up the lines up 3-1, and just, having Bergeron come back in and Krejci when they weren't 100%, just trying. You should have rode that thing out, stayed with what got you there, finished them out in 5, and be done with it. And they let him back in because you overthought it and you overcoached it. And he even said it. So to lose again would just be not good. And I would be in favor of finding somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely kind of torn by his decision making last year. I mean, putting Allmark back, he put all these guys in that were clearly injured, and it's just, it's so obvious to us as fans. So I think you look at two tails of the tape. On one hand, he had one of the best teams in the NHL, blew it in round 1. Year 2, he arguably got the most out of a team that no one was expecting out of, with no veterans really on the team. So bipolar opposite teams. So if he gets bounced in 1 again, at the end of the day, you just have to look at the result, which would not be good. He's had 2 different types of teams now. And so if we get to the playoffs, I think it just becomes maybe like a consequences thing. I know Maddie they brought him in to be the opposite of Bruce Cassidy. I thought Bruce Cassidy was a little heavy on consequences. You make one mistake, you're up in the box the next game. Whereas Jim Montgomery, I don't think does enough consequences, right? If you make a mistake, it's not you have to just go up to the box to get punished. It's the way you word it. Hey, maybe you go up there to get a better view of the game, right? And then there's still consequences for bad plays, but maybe you're not as hard as Bruce Cassidy, or you're massaging the truth a little bit. But it's interesting. I feel like if he does get bounced in the first round, we should be looking elsewhere for a new coach.
Yeah. Well, coach talk, off-season talk, all leads us right into the free skate segment where, Maddie, what we do during free skate is it's free skate. Everybody, we're out on the ice. We're chit-chat about what's going on, what our thoughts are. We've all got, some different ideas. We all see the game a little bit differently. I'll go ahead and start. It's a popular topic of discussion, right now for sure. But if we're looking ahead to the off season, there's a lot of moves that are going to happen. When we get to the off season, we kept all of our UFAs. We kept Allmark, or not Allmark. We kept DeBrusque. We kept JVR. There's already heavy trade talk on Linus Allmark. If the season were to have ended yesterday and we're now in the offseason and things can happen, what would a successful offseason look like in your eyes? What is a good return? Say we trade Allmark. Do we bring DeBrusque back or not? Do we bring JVR back or not? What does a good offseason look like for you as this team, which is arguably overachieved, and we're in bonus hockey land, in my opinion, this season. I think we got a real good team, but I think we're a year ahead of schedule. What holes do you anticipate us trying to fill? Anybody out there that it's like, hey, we save on X salary, we move on this guy, bring back whatever, save on his salary, bring in this whale. Anybody standing out to you on what the Bruins might do in this possibly pivotal offseason for the next phase of Bruins hockey?
Maddie, I'll let you give the first take. I'll go second.
Well, here's what I would do. I'd let all the UFAs go. Every single one of them. DeBrusque, all of them. Shattenkirk, the defenseman, Heinen, all of them. All the UFAs go. I'd sign Swayman to his deal. I'd trade Allmark. You got to make a decision on probably keeping Bussy's waiver eligible, because you don't want to lose Bussy, DiPietro, Allmark, three goaltenders throughout your system. So you got to figure that thing out. What I'd like to see, obviously, is a young center, promising center. I just don't know if you can get it. So if you can't, I want to get a winger who can score. Like, there's guys out there I like Chandler Stevenson. I like Jonathan Marchessault. I like some guys. I'd throw something at Stamkos if he wanted it for a couple of years. Like, maybe if you can't get a young center, maybe you go with a veteran guy. And I'd shore up. I need some nasty on D. Like, I need someone who's just nasty. In 2011, when they won, they had Ferentz and McQuaid and Boychuk, and they had Thornton, and they had they just had guys who were just, they would scrum, and they would be hard to play against.
They were warriors.
They wouldn't back down. They were, and they don't have that on this team. So I need to change, and one guy doesn't change it. So it really needs to be a culture thing. So I'd start to change the culture more toward being a little nasty, a little, having a little bit of that added in, especially on defense. And those are probably the two things, a defenseman and either a scoring winger or a center, and then see what you have. But I let all the UFAs go, and I start the sort of the rebuild of some of the roster anyway. And you know what? I explore trading Lindholm. I explore what you might get for Hampus Lindholm, because that's part. If you can do that and then replace him with a defenseman with some kind of some a-holery, then that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, I like that take. I think we are going to struggle. There's a lot of free agents going in this offseason to go after. I think the problem that we're in is not where the hole, not in the holes that we could technically fill. I feel like I agree with letting everyone go. Like, Matt Grizzly, gone, get him out of here. DeBrusque, get him out of here. I think Heinen's on there. Maybe that's one you could get some value out of, but again, we're looking at a third line center role for him, if not a wing. it's going to be really tough to find a center. And I think we've had the luxury of having a Bergeron and Krejci for so long that we never really had to think about it. And unfortunately, I just pulled up the list. There's not a lot of youth at the center position. So that means you're going after someone who's probably older, probably has a higher cap hit than you'd probably like to want to sign. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to do a 1 or 2 year deal to maybe fill that gap. And again, there's not a lot out there. I think Jonathan Marchessault is probably the best one on that list. I know he had been tied to Elias Lindholm. That was, interesting around the trade, but I just don't think we could have got him at the trade deadline. Mm-hmm. No one catches my eyes like, hey, I really want that guy if I have to be honest at the center position. So that's what I'm most worried about. Right. The good news is Allmark goes, Grizzly goes, DeBrusk goes. I mean, you're looking at plenty of cap space to sign someone. It's just, are we going to have the ability to do that? And that's what I'm a little worried about.
Right.
Yeah, the return to nastiness is something that we've talked about a lot over the years, Ryan and I, of just Bruins hockey, what the identity of what this hockey club, how this hockey club plays is not the flashy, sexy, new age hockey, let's call it. We are the guys that are going to outwork you, outcheck you. We're the guys that you can shatter our femur, and we're still going to kill this penalty against the best player on the planet, and then go back out on the fourth line the next year. Like that is the identity of what I view Bruins hockey. I think it's the identity of what a lot of people view Bruins hockey as, and I'd love to see kind of a culture shift back to that, of finding guys that are just workers, are just grinders, are just, and I understand that's becoming less and less of a thing in youth hockey as we're moving up. There is, and we're seeing this in all sports. Basketball's gotten softer, football's gotten softer. It should be no surprise that, from the American prospect pool, we're getting a little softer. But there are still guys out there that just want to come in and just want to, play quality minutes and then just hit the crap out of other people and then go do their job, but will never shy away from a big hit. I think to your point, like that, I would love to see the Bruins get back to just that nastiness, just that, like, don't mess with me. Don't mess with my D pairing. Don't mess with my center. Like, I will deck you, son. Like, I will put you in your place and not take a penalty for it. I do think that should be something that the Bruins pursue. Right, to your point, I just don't know if there's that many guys that are available and out there to do that. So that might have to come from the inside, which would take a culture shift on the inside, which kind of leads into is that the direction Montgomery wants to go? If it is, can he achieve it? If it's not, should a guy like Cam Neely and Sweeney replace a coach that we've tried? If we bow out again weekly, to your point, we've now tried the high flying, sexy version of this hockey, and it's not working for this club. Maybe it didn't work in 2019, didn't work last year. Maybe it's like, hey, maybe that's the wake up call they need to kind of shift to. Time to go back to what Bruins hockey is, and that is, the Broad Street Bullies on steroids.
Yeah, and I a couple moves we made recently too. So Andrew Peak, and then we picked up Drew Bavaro, who played at Notre Dame. He's a little bit of a bigger body. I mean, these guys are defensemen that we clearly see something in. So maybe they're thinking ahead of the curve. They're already kind of planning to get rid of people like Grizzlick, and we've seen them have success with some of the rookie defensemen this year. So maybe they're gearing up to kind of just stockpile the talent at defense and pick through the muck and figure out which one of these is the best guy that maybe can bring some nasty. It's interesting because the only way I see us getting a first line center, to be honest, is trading we'd have to trade Allmark to pull that piece back, because it would be really hard to get in the free agent pool. At least someone we want. We're not going to be able, someone we want on a good deal and not overpaying. I think it's going to be hard to get without trading someone like Allmark. as well.
If they try to get Hannafin, here's the reason why I don't want Hannafin is because Hannafin, Lindholm, Lowry is like the same guy. All three left defensemen are the same guy. Like I want a little bit of a difference in. I want your third pair to be kind of rough and tumble. They play 12 minutes a game. They just, they're physical. They keep you out of the front of the net. They get in the scrums. Like they're kind of nasty, like McQuaid in Ference, that type of thing. Like they play 12 minutes and they kind of do their job. They kill penalties, take some of the pressure off the top unit. And this needs to be a difference in the type of style. And I just think that Hannafin, Lindholm, and Lowry is the same offensive-minded left shot defenseman. I think it's too similar. And that's why I don't want Hannafin. Now, if you got rid of Lindholm and decided to go with Hannafin, that's a different debate. I don't know if that's good or bad or indifferent, whatever that is. But I think if that's your 3 left shot D, like I'm a left side D, I'm just like, I don't know if I love that there's no real difference in style.
Well, Hannafin obviously went to Vegas, just signed a contract extension. I think it was earlier today. Maybe, he did. Okay. So apparently he's not leaving Vegas.
Good.
So he's off. So he's off the table there.
Great.
And I don't know. I didn't watch a whole lot of Columbus Blue Jackets games this year, but in the 2 seasons prior to this, Peaks actually had quality ice time and been a quality player, but he brings that physicality. So maybe the Bruins bought low with the trust of like, hey, change of scenery. He's saying all the right things in his intro press conference. He's excited to be playing for an original 6 team. Maybe he is that guy that, is like a Johnny Boychuk or an Adam McQuaid who never lights up the stat sheet all that much, but Jack Edwards loves him because he's in the middle of every scrum and, he plays 2 seconds before the whistle and 2 seconds after the whistle. And, just having a guy like that, maybe he's that guy, maybe he's not, but I do think that we've got to go find those guys again, guys that are going to be comfortable playing more on the darker gray side of the line than, necessarily on the white side of the line.
Sure. I do want to bring up just the transition I feel like we've seen. It's like I would love to have an Adam McQuaid, like a Dennis Seidenberg was like the epitome of Boston defense in my eyes. Like he was just an animal out there, but it seems the trend just in the whole NHL seems to be moving away from that. So it's interesting. I mean, I think we need to Maddie's point, like having 3 of the same guy isn't doing us any good. Like we need to have someone back there that can beat the other team down. But I think the NHL is moving away from that. Hopefully Peak is kind of the answer there, but definitely interesting to kind of see the transition over the last 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other things you guys want to talk about? Any nagging questions we want to ask? Any pointers? Any looking forward to this final playoff push? Anybody we want to see step up? What anything along those lines?
I really hope it's Toronto. I just think it would be a fantastic series, like all the storylines and just I think it'd just be off the charts good series. I'm scared to death of it. I think at some point Toronto's going to get over the hump. I think it could be this year. I mean they're really talented and they always have been, but I just think they're more talented than the Bruins now for sure. And the Bruins are going to have to play really good hockey. I know they had success in the regular season, but I think that Toronto will be a really tough out, especially with all the pressure and all the failures they've had. So I think it'd be a great series, though, and I'm really hoping for that. And I'm really hoping that the Bruins can play the right way and get the production they need from certain guys. And I just think that the Bruins tend to feel some pressure, and I think that Montgomery will. I think that the players will, and I'm just interested to see how they'll respond.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, this is one of those it's probably one of the first time going into the playoffs where I have little expectations. So hopefully my blood pressure stays down, but
Right.
I mean, it never does. Once we're
That's
in it,
not going to happen.
once you're in it, you obviously want us to win every game, but it's the first time where I feel like if we make it to the second round, I won't be like super disappointed, I guess, per se. But it's interesting. There's going to be a lot happening regardless after the season. So I think it's going to be, regardless of the outcome this year, there's going to be a lot of changes coming, and we're going to have a lot to talk about next year.
Sure.
I'm excited. Yeah. A lot on the move for sure.
Yeah. I'd welcome a Toronto series. I think that, to Maddie's your point, stylistically, if they're on their game and we're not, it's a brutal matchup. They've got the talent. If we play rush hockey against Toronto, it's not going to go well. No. The good news is very recently we've kind of established the blueprint that we can kind of look back to and point to, which would be a saving grace. The other thing, I honestly think we'd know how that series goes after the first two games at the Garden.
Right.
We'd know whether or not we are delaying the inevitable or whether or not, nope, we've still got this. And having these two major wins now, I don't foresee, 4-1, 4-1, 4-1, 4-1 in 4 straight games in the playoffs. It's typically not how playoff hockey works, but having these two so close together at arguably the worst stretch of performances that the Bruins have done, I think that a good coach and a smart locker room can look at that, take the positives, identify some negatives in other areas and say, hey, this is what we've got to do against these guys. And by the way, it's the Leafs. We own these guys. Let's remember that. But if they come out in game one and they're under pressure and feeling the pressure and it goes poorly, I think we'll know right away, yikes.
Right.
So I think it would be a hell of a series. I think it would be arguably the series of the first round.
Yeah.
If the playoffs were to start tomorrow, I think it definitely would be the series of the first round. And, I talk about blockbuster. You've got, I don't know if there's a city in the world that cares about hockey as much as Toronto does. And I don't know if there's a city in the world that loves watching those fan fests devolve into riots than Boston does. So I would absolutely, I would welcome that. I would welcome a return to all of that. I can't wait for the montages of 2013 to come back and get played in the pregame hype. I would love that. It does look like that's the way we're going to end up here in a couple of weeks. And I'm glad that all of us are excited for it because I think it's going to give us a lot of content, if nothing
Absolutely.
else.
Tons of content. Yeah. And people will be jacked up about it for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on, we've got 3 games between now and this time next week. The first being up on the other side of the border in that disgusting city called Montreal, and then 2 home games against Philly and Ottawa. So we're gonna put my sin bin theory to the test. These are 3 teams that we should be able to beat. These are teams that are not expected to make the playoffs. I know there's a couple of mathematical scenarios that could play in some favors, but these are 3 teams that the Bruins should beat. Before we get to those 3, we have to look at the 3 that we called last week because, Maddie, I owe Ryan a nice double shot of tequila here because when we guess our predictions, we've got a running competition. If we both guess the correct winner, we both get a point. But if one of us predicts the correct score exactly, you get 2 points on top of that. And so all 3 of us, or all 3 games, Ryan and I projected as Bruins wins. So in the first 2 games, we each get 2 points. The last game, we obviously lost. Neither of us get a point. But the problem is Ryan predicted a 4-1 Toronto win.
Wow.
And so
Oh
to you,
boy.
buddy. This now puts him up 3-0 over me. We've been neck and neck until last week when he broke the ice.
Wow.
And now he's taken a big leap, which is becoming more and more insurmountable because we tend to predict these games very closely. And I really need to get one this week. So
wow, you got to get one before your liver explodes. Yeah.
Yes.
Holy moly.
Pat, I don't know if you wrote down my prediction, but I think came pretty close on Pittsburgh too. Did I have 5-2 in that one, or?
You absolutely did. You had 6-2. Yeah, in Pittsburgh.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. So I had 4-2 with Toronto, so I missed it by a goal. Pittsburgh, I had 4-3. You had 6-2, so you were closer, but doesn't matter.
Yep.
And then we both had pretty blowout wins over St. Louis, which obviously didn't happen. So I'm going to try and right the ship this week. Tomorrow's game up in Montreal. I do predict we get back on the winning track. I do think we have a better offensive game. I don't think we shut them out. I'm going 3-1 Bruins over Montreal.
Yeah, I'm sticking with what's working for me. I also expect to win, but I expect a 4-1 win. I think we kind of light the lamp a little bit more. But I'm gonna do the Ryan's betting line of the week on the fly because it is for that game. So
okay, here we go.
Bruins have the puck line at -1.5. I love that. I think we win by more than 2 goals. That's +110. Under 6 goals total. You know, we're reversing the trend. We're going over 6 goals for it's felt like 2 weeks since the Islanders. 5-1, 4-1, 2-1, 4-1, 5-1, 5-1. All 6 goals are under. So at the very least, you got a push out of that.
Okay.
So I'm parlaying those at +405 odds.
All right, there it is. That'll be. We'll know whether or not you've beat Vegas very early in the week. 4-1. All right, Matty, we're not going to hold you accountable to the drinking game, but do you want to make a prediction?
Sure. I'm gonna go the opposite. I'm gonna go Montreal and the over. I'm going 5-4 Boston.
Wow.
5.
Nice.
All right, 9 goals. Woo-wee. All right.
That's going to be a typical Montreal. They suck. We're better in Montreal. I'm 51 years old. Montreal games are just, they're not real. They're just fantasy world. I don't know. Something happens in Montreal.
I can't wait for the
You're
next
not wrong. You're not
full
wrong.
benches. For the next time we get a full benches brawl. You know, maybe in a couple of years when we've retooled the physicality and the nastiness of this Bruins club, we'll be able to unload the benches on each other.
Right.
All right, March 16th, day before St. Patty's Day, home with hosting the Flyers. I've got 3-0. I've got an absolute dominating performance back at the Garden. It'll be their St. Patty's Day game, so there'll be a lot of green in the warm-ups. There'll be a lot of green everywhere. It's one of my favorite games of the year to watch, and it's against a Flyers team that's just no good. And I think that we remember that we're good and they're not, and we go 3-0.
Interesting. Yeah, I would love to make that prediction, but Philly is fighting for that playoff spot, so I feel like they just might have that little extra oomph over us on that game. I'm going with a 4-3. I know this is just for extra credit, but overtime win. I think we that's a game. Hopefully, if we're going with a win in Montreal, I feel like that's a game we could maybe overlook. And just kind of they come out, score maybe 2 quick ones, and we kind of turn the ship around mid-game. But, yeah, I'm going with 4-3 in overtime. Bruins
still
win.
Still a Bruins win. All right.
Yeah.
Matt, you got an idea?
I like Boston 4-2 over the Flyers. They've had great success, and they score a ton of goals against the Flyers. But like Ryan said, the Flyers are fighting for a playoff spot. Torts had an absolute meltdown the other day. I mean, they play really hard for him. So I think they'll hang in because of that. But the Bruins just seem to score tons of goals against them. So 4-2 Boston.
You know, talk about a coach that always seems to get the most or the most effort wise out of his players. Everywhere Tortorella's gone, those guys to a man will bleed for him. So, all right. And last, home against Ottawa. I've got a cruising 4-1 win over the Sens. They were frisky earlier in the year. They've absolutely folded. I don't think the Senators. they're already looking for the offseason in my book. I think that the Bruins steamroll them and end the week on a high.
Yeah, you're not giving me a lot of wiggle room. I've been going back and forth. I think there's a shutout in this game that I was adamant about. I was leaning towards 5. I think I'm going back to 4, so I'm going 4-0 win. I know the margin on our prediction isn't big there with you pulling 4-1, but 4-0 Bruins, shut out by whichever goalie's playing that night.
I like Ottawa. This is your stinker. I like Ottawa 3-1. I think Ottawa plays the Bruins, sneakily well. Like they in the last couple of years, I think they have young legs. They seem to be a little bit of a matchup problem with Boston. They scored a bunch of goals against the Bruins, and I think this is the stinker after the Bruins win a couple. They fall asleep at home against Ottawa and lose.
Yeah, could be a look-ahead game to the Rangers on that following Thursday.
This is going to be prototypical Bruins, lose to a lesser team.
Pat, I think we had a stipulation that if Matty guesses any of the 3 games right, we both have to take a shot next week.
I think that's a great stipulation.
I like it. I like it. We're all right. We're gonna throw it in, and we'll snippet that video and we'll tag the Bruins Benders so that all your followers can know that you've gotten us us taking a shot. I know Ryan, you mentioned right there looking ahead to the Rangers game. Is his suspension's going to be over by the time that happens? Right, we get a taste of this physical phenom.
Yeah, I think so, but unfortunately, I don't think Pat Maroon's off the shelf by then. So I don't know. Maybe that's a Trent Frederick, or maybe they pull someone up from the baby Bruins to do that dirty work. But geez, that kid. I mean, talk about claim to fame within a short amount of time. I mean, you can't get him off the social media with all these hits and fights talk about old time hockey, Matty, and you're saying get the physicality back. I mean, he's the one opposite of everything we've been
seeing. He's the young guy that just wants to bruise and bang, and you know what? It's given the Rangers a spark. Whether or not it's a flash in the pan or whether or not it's sustainable, I don't know. Honestly, you never wish anybody ill this early in their career, no matter who they're playing for, unless it's Montreal. But I'd like to see him have some longevity and some success because I think he is a lot of fun, but I don't necessarily know if all he does is get in fights and get suspended, if he's going to have a long NHL shelf life. But so let's enjoy it while it lasts. New York had Linsanity for a while. Now they've got Rempy Mania. All right. It's kind of good. It's going to be cool. I'm glad that he's back. I hope Frederick knocks his lights out and becomes the second guy to absolutely put him in his place. But no, that should be a lot of fun. We will cover that game in more depth on the pod next week. Before we get out of here, anything else that we want to cover looking ahead, to the next week? Anything we're looking for? Anything we're excited about, not excited about?
I'm looking forward. I think they should have, like I said before, I think they should really practice some load management. McAvoy, Pasternak, Marchand. I think they should do that. I think they should give guys get guys days off here and there. They play the Hurricanes a couple times. I think they play the Panthers and the Lightning. So there are like 4 or 5 games against real quality opponents. But other than that, they play the Capitals. They play, they play some teams that won't be playing for much. And I think toward the last 4 or 5 games, I think they should sit some guys and just prepare and stay healthy.
I'm just going to echo that. I mean, 100%. I think if there's time to do load management, it's these next 3 games, because then we do have the Rangers, Panthers, and Lightning, which are games you want our big guys stepping up for. So I agree. I think practice load management, and it proves Pat's point. I'm curious to see how the Jim Montgomery Simbin pans out. Hopefully we come out with 3 wins against non-playoff teams, and then we're resting our guys. We should be resting our guys and having the energy to win these games against, bottom barrel teams. So that would be the blueprint in my eyes. We'll see what actually unfolds over the next week.
Love the final takes. All right, before we get out of here, Maddie, what you got to plug? Where can we find Bruins Benders?
Bruins Benders podcast is on all platforms. It's also on YouTube, and we'll be doing live post game in the playoffs. So right after the game ends, we'll be on YouTube live, doing Benders post game live, and we're part of the Inside the Rink network. And we weekly we drop usually every Wednesday night we drop them, and we're at Bruins Benders on X and social media.
Awesome. Well, Maddie, we really appreciate you being here. This has been an absolute blast. You can follow us on X at Kings of Causeway, and on YouTube, same thing, Kings of Causeway. Follow the entire network at BSEN_617. We've got a roundtable coming up, debuting a new format. Can't wait to talk to you guys about that. Till next week. Been Pat Burke, Ryan, Maddie, good job by you guys.
Hey, appreciate the invite, fellas. Really fun.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Next time we're joining you.
Yes, we'll come right on the Benders. Let's do it. Absolutely. We'll have a blast.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Spinny will drink all sorts of tequila. Like we don't get.
Oh, there we go.
Whatever.
All right, it's my kind of party.
Yeah.
Talk about. So now we got two different kind of Benders. Let's go.
That's absolutely together.
Yeah.
All right, fellas, thank you.
Awesome.
All right, boys.
Thanks, boys.
Okay, boys. Thanks.